He came at us like a hurricane, her voice a shrill whistle through the quiet park. This is a private easement, and your vehicle is trespassing. Don't you see the sign? Can you even imagine? My grandpa, a man who built his life on quiet dignity and calm, simply let out a slow, tired sigh. This was going to be one of those days. The sun beat down, and the scent of freshly cut grass was thick in the air, a stark contrast to the venom spewing from Barbara's lips. She was our HOA's self-proclaimed queen, and she ruled with an iron fist, wielded with a terrifying lack of self-awareness. I've already called it in. The board will be notified, and you will be fined. She punctuated her words with a sharp, jabbing finger, aimed directly at my grandfather's chest. A tremor ran through me. It was one thing to harass me, but Grandpa, he just stood there, his hands clasped behind his back, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Barbara, he said, his voice a low rumble. I believe you've made a mistake. Oh, the audacity. Her nostrils flared, a fiery spectacle against her pinched, powdery face. A mistake. The rules are clear. Mr. Anderson, this is not a parking area. It's for the use and enjoyment of the community. She said, enjoyment, as if it were a foreign word. An abstract concept she'd heard about, but never truly understood. I wanted to yell, to defend him. But Grandpa's hand shot out. A gentle but firm gesture. Wait. He wasn't rattled. He was observing. The stillness he possessed was a kind of power, a shield against her frantic energy. A bead of sweat traced a path down my temple, but I kept my focus on him, on the quiet storm brewing behind his calm facade. Was this the moment? Was this the breaking point? I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Barbara, however, saw his silence as surrender. She puffed out her chest, a peacock displaying its feathers. Triumphant. See, he knows he's in the wrong. You should have thought twice about bringing that monstrous thing here. She gestured disdainfully at my custom-built green Jeep Wrangler, a vehicle I'd poured my heart and soul into. The injustice was a bitter taste on my tongue. The police will be here soon to handle this. You'll see. Her smug confidence was truly breathtaking. It was then that Grandpa Anderson took a single, slow step forward, his voice dropping even lower. Barbara, what you fail to understand is that I do know the rules. In fact, I helped write some of them. A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the air, though it was only the two of us and a couple of young kids on bikes watching with wide eyes. This land, he continued, gesturing with an open palm towards the small, grassy area where my Jeep sat, is indeed a public easement. It was deeded to the city decades ago for a public utility line, while the HOA maintains the grounds. It is, by legal definition, public property, trespassing on one's own city's land. Now that's a new one. He ended with a soft, almost theatrical chuckle. The color drained from Barbara's face. The confidence in her eyes flickered, replaced by a momentary, panicked uncertainty. That's a lie. I've been on this board for 12 years. I know every rule, every bylaw. She sputtered, her voice cracking. But the seed of doubt had been planted. It was a beautiful thing to witness. The subtle shift in power, the slow realization dawning on her face that she was no longer in control. My quiet, observant grandpa had just dropped a bombshell, and she had no defense. Just as the silence stretched thin and awkward, a new voice cut through the tension. He's right. Barbara. We all turned to see a young man, maybe a teenager, leaning against a tree, his phone in hand. I just looked it up. The original plat map. It's a public right-of-way. He held up his phone. A screenshot of a faded, official-looking document displayed for all to see. It was a twist I hadn't expected. A young, tech-savvy character acting as a truth-bringer. Barbara's face flushed a deep crimson. Who are you? What gives you the right? She demanded, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. The boy simply shrugged. I'm a new neighbor. I just don't like bullies. The words hung in the air. A final, damning blow to her authority. The sound of distant sirens began to grow louder. A menacing wail that promised an official. And for Barbara, a very public reckoning. I could see the gears turning in her mind. The frantic scramble to regain control. She had one last play. Well, you'll see. The police will still side with me. I am a member of the HOA board. After all. The patrol car pulled up. The flashing red and blue lights painting the scene in a surreal, pulsating glow. Two officers stepped out. Their faces a mix of professional detachment and weary familiarity. This wasn't the first time they'd been called out on a Barbara-induced drama. She immediately strode toward them, launching into a furious, one-sided monologue about unruly neighbors and trespassing vehicles. The officers listened patiently, their eyes occasionally glancing over at us. A silent question in their gaze. He's a menace. And that boy, he's just a troublemaker, she accused, pointing at the young man who had dared to Google the truth. The lead officer, a man with a tired expression and kind eyes, finally held up a hand. Ma'am, we're going to need to hear the other side of the story. Barbara sputtered, but she was cut off by Grandpa. Officers, he began, his voice calm and steady. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. He reached into the inner pocket of his worn blazer, his movements deliberate and slow. He pulled out a small, leather-bound case. My heart hammered in my chest. What was he doing? He flipped it open with a satisfying click. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, was a shiny, silver badge. He held it up, not arrogantly, but with a simple, quiet authority. Retired, but not out of touch. Sergeant First Class Anderson, City PD, 35 years of service. The lead officer's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine respect in his gaze. Sergeant Anderson, sir, it's an honor. You taught my father at the academy. He saluted, and his partner, a younger officer, did the same. It was a gut punch to Barbara, a blow that took the wind out of her sails entirely. The sound of her sharp intake of breath was audible, a strangled little gasp of disbelief. All this time, she had been harassing a former police sergeant. It was a beautiful, karmic twist. Grandpa didn't gloat. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply explained the situation, calmly and with legal precision, detailing the public easement, Barbara's aggressive behavior, and her false report. He even mentioned her history of similar complaints, citing a few key incidents that the officers seemed to already know about. She's been harassing people for weeks. Sergeant, the lead officer said, shaking his head. It's a nuisance. He then turned to Barbara, his tone now firm and official. Barbara, for filing a false police report and for harassment, we're issuing you a formal warning. Any further incidents, and we'll have no choice but to take you down to the station. Her face crumpled, a mask of entitlement finally cracking to reveal a very small, very pathetic person underneath. The once proud peacock had become a wet hen. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a helpless, venomous rage. But I just met her gaze with a simple, unwavering stare. The power had shifted completely. She had nothing left. She turned and stomped away, her heels clicking angrily on the pavement. The sound of final, pathetic echo of her defeat. As the officers drove away, a quiet peace descended on the park. The young man who had helped us walked over, a grin on his face. That was amazing, he said, shaking Grandpa's hand. Glad I could help. I finally let out the breath I had been holding for what felt like an eternity. A shaky, relieved exhalation. Grandpa, I started. You were a cop. Why didn't you tell me? He just smiled. A genuine, warm smile this time. I thought you knew. Besides, it's always better to lead with a calm conversation before you bring out the big guns. He winked. The victory wasn't in her public shaming, but in the quiet, righteous stand we had taken. It was a valuable lesson about the true nature of power, and how a quiet dignity can be far more effective than a loud, obnoxious display. It was a lesson about standing up for yourself, for your neighbors, and for what's right. The sun was still hot, but the air felt cooler, lighter. We just stood there for a moment. Two generations sharing a moment of quiet. Hard-won triumph. The Jeep, a symbol of so much of my own personal identity, sat there not as a trespasser, but as a testament to our victory. What do you all think? Was her punishment fair? Was my grandpa right to wait until the end to reveal his true authority?